Did you hear today how many times Paul, in the second reading, talked about reconciliation? That you and I are ambassadors of reconciliation with God. 5 times he mentions that. And in doing so, he gives us our marching orders. That you and I must be a people who reach out to others who have been separated from us. Now the gospel today falls right into that in terms of being the famous story of the prodigal son. And as we listen to the gospel, I can't help but think about our Pope Francis, who I think really looks at this gospel as being the primary scripture for his whole ministry, a ministry of mercy. This is the year of mercy, as you know, and the Pope has written books on mercy. He has called us to be a people of mercy, and he has made the year of mercy as a pilgrimage so easy that even here at St. George in Van Buren, we have a church of holy doors. What is a pilgrimage? A pilgrimage is something that every major religion has, that people go to a sacred place as a way of prayer in itself. And so the journey becomes the prayer. And so I would hope that this year yet, every one of us can take time for a pilgrimage. A week from Thursday, we will take a pilgrimage to St. Louis Basilica, the largest mosaic in the world, and then St. Joseph's Shrine there. Today, as we listen to this gospel, you and I are challenged with 2 different kinds of response to those who have separated themselves from us. We have the father, known sometimes as the prodigal father, and we have the older son. First of all, looking at the older son, there's one thing that we find very appealing about him, because he is a good man. He's done seemingly everything right. The last couple of weeks we've talked about how you and I, of course, automatically ought to be keeping the 10 Commandments. We are called to be a people who carry out the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. And with that, the Beatitudes that Jesus gives us kind of as a new command. So these are ordinary. And as we look at them, if we find ourselves really successfully doing well at living them, there's a danger that we face. And what is that danger? Except to somehow begin to think that we are better than others, that we can do it, therefore they can do it. And the truth is, all of us are recipients of God's mercy. And we have to be very grateful if God has given us the grace that, and we've responded to it, to live according to those commands. So today, as we look at the older son and we see him facing that temptation, what was his response to the younger son having sold off his inheritance and seemingly being dead? For the older son, for the most part, he is dead. He's out of the picture. The younger son left us. He's no longer part of our family. He has no inheritance. He does not belong. It's such a hard thing, because that means the older son does not even know his father. The older son does not know how compassionate his father is. He does not know how loving his father is. All he knows is he has done the right things. God bless him. But we look at the younger son and we look at the father, and we think, wow, what a story. Because if you look at what the evangelist quotes us as kind of the parameters to the story, it says he was dead and he is found. It mentions that twice. He is dead and he is found. And truly he was dead. It's not just a matter because he had sold his share of the property, but that he had dispossessed himself, and therefore really dispossessed himself from belonging to the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, he had gone over to the pagans, to those who dealt with swine. He bought into the other world. Such a giving up of all that is his. Now we think of then of the father and his concern for the son, and we think, gee, the son of mine was dead and now he's come to life. You think of those words, think yourselves how often, and I know raising children, you find yourselves doing the same thing, how often you have made a sacrifice for them. Because when we hear about death or we hear about threat of death, we say, golly, what can we do? I can't help but think of a couple of years ago when there was a major mine collapse in Chile, and how the international community seemed to all come together to try to help rescue these miners. Like, good golly, I would have probably thought, they're done for. There's no hope. I might as well leave the mine sealed, and that's it. We'll just have funeral services for them. But the world came to their rescue and were able to bring them out of the mine. They were, in a sense, truly dead, and now we're given a second chance at life. Like, when it comes to caring for people who are so near death, and we can do such a great job of it, how much more important is our spiritual life? If someone is dead spiritually, then can we not make also some sacrifice there to help them? So we look at the father today and say, what kind of sacrifice? In the early centuries, right after the persecution that the church experienced, many people were being tortured, killed, much as they are today by ISIS. Many, if they had been willing to offer a little sacrifice to the emperor, could have spared their lives. But some chose to say, okay, I've got family, I've got responsibilities, I'm not going to do that. And so they abandoned the faith, while others saw family members and friends being sacrificed and killed and tortured for the sake of their faith. And then all of a sudden, when the persecution came to an end, some of those who had abandoned the church were wanting to come back. And you can imagine how those felt who had stayed the course. I was like, no way, they left us. But the church, in its wisdom and its understanding of God's mercy, said no matter how serious it is, we must be willing and ready to welcome them back. That's our call, to be a church of mercy. And so how far do we go? St. Augustine, in the 4th century or so, kind of paraphrased his responses. He said people would tell him, I want to be lost. And he said, but I don't want you to be lost. I don't want the faith. But he said, I want you in the faith. In other words, his response is not what you want, but it's what God wants. I want to do what he wants. After all, who decides is a member of the family? I've got 7 younger brothers and sisters, and I can tell you, I never had a say about any of them coming into the world. They were my parents' children. They're automatically my brothers and sisters. And so it is the father who determines, and the parents who determines who belongs to the family and who doesn't. And in this case, we find the father saying, no, the son is part of my family. He is your brother, even though the older son denied him. And so we say, how far do we go? We see Bishop Sheen used to be known for saying that he said there's absolutely no one who cannot be saved if someone is willing to pay the price. Well, Jesus already paid the price for our salvation, but there's a price to pay in terms of bringing those back who have left the banquet of the altar. And what is that price? We can learn from the Father today in terms of 2 things particularly. One is prayer, and the other is fasting. Prayer in terms of the Father being there, and you notice how quickly he saw the Son coming from a distance. In other words, don't you know that the Father was day after day after day waiting, keeping an eye open for that Son, and in that process, probably praying, Father, at least keep him safe. Father, may he be well. Father, bring him back home to me. Such is the care of a parent. I've known several families who have children and they have no idea where those children are, how that really tears up the family. How you are. When your teenager goes out on Saturday night and you think, well, it's time for bed, you want to go to bed, and you lay there, but do you go to sleep? No. You wait until that door is closed. You want to know your children are home safe. And you're probably like this father, laying there praying, Father, keep them safe on the road, bring them back to me. So prayer. We are called to be a people of prayer for those who have gone away from us, who abandoned even the faith. And the other is fasting. Because in the process of prayer, in the process of keeping his eyes open and looking, you know good and well the Father fasted. And by that I mean he denied himself being able to do some of what he would do had his son been home. By the very fact that he was waiting day after day, he probably missed out on doing a number of things that that he would have otherwise been tending to. So prayer and fasting. And that's your call, and that's my call. And so this week, in a very special way, as we enter this fourth week of Lent, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to think about those in this area. Think about at least one person that you know in particular in this area who has abandoned the banquet of the altar. And I want you every day, pray for that person by name. And along with that, because I know all of you are fasting, right, during Lent, I want you to offer your fast for this week for that person. Prayer and fasting, making the sacrifice, and doing penance necessary can change the hearts of others and bring them back to the Lord. Today, as we begin this fourth week, this journey, this pilgrimage of Lent, I encourage you, pray for others. Pray that they return and not develop that hard heart of the older son who says, hey, that's their choice. They're free. Let them go. No, you and I can never be satisfied in letting go. But we must always, with the Father, be ready to welcome, be ready to bring them back home, and wait for them to be safe with each of us.